Many fans have a growing fondness for a variety of locations all the way through Resident Evil, whether it be the Spencer Mansion, the Nest, the Dead Factory, Rockfort Island, Salazar's Castle, or the Dipiada Ruins. But the RPD has been one of the most revisited locations in all of Resident Evil, along with Raccoon City. The Raccoon City Police Department has become one of the most beloved and replayable locations in all of Resident Evil, possibly in all of video games. Starting out as a museum which would become the home of the RPD and the STARS unit. Its well-lit but haunting environment drew us in Resident Evil 2 and 3. The fully 3D but still haunting home of the STARS team would return in Outbreak Files, and then we got the chance to revisit it anew in Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 Remake. Now the building has been expanded greatly with some entirely new areas becoming available and some old favourites getting a facelift. The dark foreboding hallways, the ruined crumbling architecture, and the bodies of RPD officers and civilians littering the halls while the undead roam for their new prey. The architecture has been updated and the fine art and sculptures adorning the building are looking even more exquisite, and in some cases unsettling. The RPD and other locations around Raccoon City are littered with classical sculptures and art pieces to admire between surviving the outbreak. Some appearing frequently, while others only having one home. Some of these art pieces are pulled from real-world classical art ranging from 19th century to 800 BC. So let's take a look at a couple of these art exhibits and their stories. Before we continue, please do remember to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to stay notified of new content. First off, we have this painting that I haven't been able to find out the artist for, or when it was made, or its title. It depicts a woman trying to shield a wounded man on the ground being swarmed by several ravens and a cherub but with raven wings. It could be a part of a larger art piece, but I'm not certain. It is only found inside the library just above the stairs leading up to the 3rd floor. The painting has a similar style to the painting of the martyrdom of Saint Sebastian, but either this painting is part of a larger piece or it is just untraceable. But the more I look at it, the more it reminds me of the crows from the original Resident Evil games. This could have been put in as a reference to the murder of crows that swarm and peck you to death. Also, the child with the raven wings could be a coincidental nod to the raven-winged logo of Resident Evil Village. I decided to look into this in more depth, and after talking with a few friends of mine who deal in classical art, they informed me that cherubs and angels tended not to have raven wings, which apparently is more of a modern art trope. This leads me to believe that this is not a classical art piece as I first thought, but a modern piece made with classical influences, hence why I haven't been able to find any similar works. So let's move on to some real art pieces that predate the 20th century. Next we have this painting by Francois Boucher made in 1751 entitled The Twilight of Venus. This was originally created for Madame de Pompadour, the mistress of King Louis XV of France. She was a great fan and patron of Francois, being a regular client of his from 1747 until her untimely death in 1764. This piece was originally commissioned to be placed in the dressing room at the Bellevue Chateau near Paris. It now resides at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. It is an oil-on-canvas painting depicting the Roman goddess Venus, surrounded by 4 Cupid-like angels. It is only one of 9 different paintings that can be found in both the RPD and the nearby orphanage. It is found inside the main hallway on the 1st floor, on the 2nd floor in the private collection, also on the 2nd floor in the hallway east of the chief's office, and it's also found inside the orphanage in the hallway east of the director's room. The painting itself is one of the most beautiful in the game, with great use of form and colour to contrast from the background and the environment. Compared to the original, it looks like the painting has been tweaked slightly to darken the background to make Venus and the Cupids stand out a little bit more. The use of coloured soft fabrics complement the figure of Venus well, with the intricate design details in the sofa, fabric and other furnishings all standing out too. This to me is one of my favourite paintings I have seen in a Resident Evil game, but that doesn't mean that the others are not as beautiful. Next up we have this amazing piece by English-born American landscape artist Thomas Cole, painted in 1833 and aptly named Titan's Goblet. The Titan's Goblet was originally painted for a patron, Luman Reed, but it was rejected. It then ended up in the hands of fellow artist John M. Faulkner. This painting also resides at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. The painting itself is an oil-on-canvas creation depicting a goblet dominating a green landscape, with vegetation covering the goblet along with buildings and ships in the water-filled basin. It can be found in 5 different locations in Resident Evil 2 Remake, namely the secret room under the goddess statue in the RPD main hall, on the 2nd floor inside the chief's office, in the private collection area behind the bars, and inside the orphanage inside the nursery, and finally in the hallway east of the director's room. The landscapes that the goblet is placed on are Italian, since Cole was known for painting a lot of those kinds of locations in his other works. The Titan's goblet has been described as a work that defies full explanation, but let's take a look at a few of the details. The stem of the goblet is almost like the bark of a tree, which some believe is a subtle nod to the world tree of Norse mythology, Yggdrasil, which connected the 9 realms of Asgard, Vanaheim, Hel, Jotunheim, Niflheim, Svartalfheim, Muspelheim, Alfheim, and Midgard. The vegetation and ruins line the rim of the goblet, while the boats sail across the surface of the water, again linking not only to Norse mythology, but even Greek mythology too. There are so many interpretations this painting has received from countless artists, such as the goblet being linked to the Greek sun god Helios, with others believing it is showing the grandeur of the past and the encroachment of nature. But regardless of the interpretation, this is a real gem of a painting hidden in the dark halls of the RPD in the orphanage. Next up we have a woman's portrait simply titled Woman in a Riding Habit, painted by French artist Gustave Courbet in 1856. It is currently residing at, yes you guessed it, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. It was thought that this was originally a painting of novelist and poet Louise Colette, who would inspire and be the main creative muse of writer Gustave Flaubert. But it turns out this was painted as the second of a pair of paintings. In this case, the painting was of Madame Clément Laurier. It was painted for the occasion of her marriage to her husband, who was painted himself 1 year prior in 1855. The husband's painting can be found at the Milwaukee Art Museum. Why they haven't placed both paintings together I am not sure, but in the game it can be found in a few locations around the RPD, such as the hallway west of the dark room, the STARS office inside Wesker's enclosed area, inside the chief's office, and finally in the art room near the secretary's room. The painting itself, like a lot of paintings of this period, was done as an oil on canvas, and from the looks of it the painting has been darkened slightly, whether through the use of digital manipulation or clever use of in-game lighting. It's a bit more unsettling to look at for long periods, especially when you hear the creaking and ambient noise of the RPD as you look at it. Before being put into the game, the painting had a great deal of detail and looked more inviting. Even artist Mary Cassatt admired it and described the painting as the finest women's portrait Courbet ever did. And looking at the original piece, we can't argue with that. Our final painting is The Flower Girl, painted in 1846 by Charles Cromwell Ingham, an American artist originally born in Ireland. This piece shows a woman in front of a landscape holding a basket of flowers in her arm, with a single potted plant in the other hand. Like many of the other paintings in Resident Evil 2 Remake, it can be found at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. But in this case, the painting can be found in 2 locations, inside the chief's office, and also in the hallway east of the director's room at the orphanage. The Flower Girl was considered a highly unusual subject for Ingham, since he would rarely stray from portraiture. It's believed that this was painted as an oil-on-canvas speculative piece, or possibly as a commission for patron Jonathan Sturgis, who ended up owning the work once it appeared on exhibition in spring 1847 at the National Academy of Design. It's believed that the influence behind this painting may have been street vendors and also similar works made by Spanish painter Esteban Murillo. Both Ingham's The Flower Girl and Esteban's The Flower Girl share a very similar background and pose. Ingham's painting showed a lot more colour through the use of the large flower bouquet, and it is believed he painted the flowers from a still life to a level of detail unseen during the 19th century. In her right hand, the girl offers a potted fuchsia, which would have been a gesture of the goddess Flora, the god of flowering plants and those that would bear fruit in Roman mythology. Fuchsias were symbolic of frustrated love, but I doubt that Chief Irons showed any kind of love except for his disturbing desire to murder, dissect and stuff animals and Catherine Warren. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to stay notified of new content. Thank you, Rezzers, and I'll see you again soon.